Go on then. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. These are forget-me-nots, and they've self-seeded in the cottage garden, and they will flower next spring, and now is a really good time to move them if you want to. They're biennials, which means that these are new plants. They have grown as seedlings from the parents that flowered this April and May, established themselves as healthy plants with a good root system, and they will flower in turn next April and May and develop their own plants thereafter. But when they seed, the seed tends to drop around the parent, so you get a mass of young plants bunched up together. So I've taken a load from the cottage garden and brought them here. And I'm going to fill all the bare soil here on the mound because bulbs will push through and I can plant through the forget-me-nots. And what I'm really trying to achieve by moving these is a lovely pale cloud of blue underneath the bulbs as they rise up through them with their yellow shimmer. I think it will work. Mind you, we'll find out next April. Now, coming up on today's programme, Carol will be sharing inspiration to guarantee colour in your beds all autumn and into winter.
It's called Autumn Joy because this is the best plant ever in the autumn for butterflies and bees.
We meet a gardener creating a catwalk collection of flowers.
I'm just currently tending to my dahlias. They are the main show in this bed. They are the drama. They are my drag queens of the flower beds.
After the hottest summer on record, we visit a garden that has been adapted to cope with the effects of our changing climate.
Before I planted out these brassicas, I sowed the bed thickly with phacelia. And the whole idea here is to see whether a living mulch of phacelia will actually help the plants and reduce the need to water them.
And Joe is finding out why our garden in Bristol is transforming lives through plant propagation.
This place is just fabulous, and it means so much to so many people. You know, there's the horticulture side, there's the educational side, but beyond that, it's about giving people confidence and bringing people together.
This is the perfect time of year to rearrange your garden. It's not just a question of getting an even spread of plants, like the forget-me-nots, and that certainly applies to any of the biennials, but also it's a brilliant time to plant trees and shrubs and hedges. And if you've got established plants that you love, many of them, particularly hardy perennials, can all be divided, and now is the best time to do it. For example, I've got here a hardy geranium. This is Geranium nodosum, and it's really good in slightly shady places, flowering from early summer right through into autumn. What I'm trying to do is get as much of the root ball up as possible, rather than divide it whilst it's still in the ground. We always used to think this was a job best done in February and March, maybe even April, but with climate change, October and November is the sweet spot. There you have the roots. Now you can see the roots are pretty fibrous. They're not great thick roots burying themselves down in. There are lots of smaller roots, which makes them easy to divide and easy to move. It is worth pointing out that we've had pretty much constant rain for the last 2 weeks. And it's soaked in maybe 2 inches in places, but it's still very dry underneath. It's going to take a really wet winter and hopefully a wet spring to get us back to recover from the drought that we had this summer. Okay, I'm going to divide it with my spade. With a smaller geranium, you can pull them apart. With this one, I just want to divide it, put half back, and then have a substantial plant that I can put elsewhere. This can go back into the same hole, and I can guarantee that by this time next year, it will have grown as big again. If I give that a good soak and a mulch, it won't even know it's been moved. It's probably the best advice to cut them back hard. Any perennial that you move, cut it back hard after moving, and that means that the roots are doing less work whilst they're growing themselves. However, geraniums are tough, and there's still some flowers on it. So in this case, I'm going to break the rules slightly and just leave it alone. What I do want to do now is plant the other half and find a home for that. Anything you move at this time of year, even if it's been raining for days and days, give it a good soak. The roots will then get established before the plant dies right back. And then next spring, you'll have a much better root system able to cope with drought if it comes. All this work is geared towards making the garden look as good as possible next spring and summer. But down at Glebe Cottage, Carol has been celebrating the joys of autumn and looking forward into winter.
I love the autumn, don't you? There's something so special, it's magical. The leaves everywhere are changing colour. There's this wonderful array of rich hues. And the leaves are falling. On sunny days, they crunch underfoot. And you can smell the difference too. One autumn morning, usually when the temperature's just beginning to drop, you come out of the back door and your nostrils are assailed by this wonderful fragrance. And it's this tree. It smells of toffee apples. It's a Cercidiphyllum and it's famous for that sort of lovely burnt, sugary scent. When a compound in its leaves breaks down in the autumn. And this is the time when most plants are beginning to think about going to sleep, they're dying down. But for a few plants, they're just coming into their prime. Autumn is their season. This garden's generally known as the brick garden, simply because all the paths here are made of bricks. But its alternative title is the blue and yellow garden, because that's the predominant theme here. Of course, it's blue, yellow and green, but at the moment, that green is being completely transformed. And of course, it's the grasses that are changing the most. This is a very open site and it's full of grasses. They've been here all the time, but it's right now that they really come into their own, sparkling in the autumn light. And they provide the perfect backdrop for all these late flowering perennials, which are currently at their absolute zenith. I think it's impossible to imagine anything that glows more brightly than this Rudbeckia fulgida demii. And fulgida just means sparkling, and that's what it does. It just glows, it warms everything up, it makes you feel good. It's one of my favourite stalwart plants. Its forebears are prairie plants, and they love this sort of open, sunny position. And they love mingling with other plants too. Marvellous with some of the blue asters of autumn. Again, members of the daisy family. They look glorious on their own, but in combination with this blue aconite, Aconitum carmichaelia, it's absolute heaven. Well, We've been here for 46 years now, and I suppose my garden's what you call established. It changes, of course, all the time, but nonetheless, every so often, I yearn to do a completely new and different planting. And I want to do just that today to celebrate the autumn. And I hope it's going to give you lots and lots of ideas and inspire you to do something of your own. So I just want to introduce you to what's going to be my new bed. If you've been here a few weeks ago, it was full of potatoes, and I've managed to lift the rest of them. Got quite a lot of chips and mash there, I think. It's a lovely south-facing site, just like the brick garden, fairly open, and the soil here is very, very heavy, but gorgeously fertile. But just to improve its texture and give it a bit of extra nutrient after I've taken these spuds out, I want to incorporate some of my lovely compost. It's full of nutrients, so it's going to improve the texture, and it's going to make sure that all these plants I'm going to put in here are going to grow like mad. So the plants that I want to incorporate here are all things that are looking wonderful at the moment, but they're also things that have got other times of year when they look great as well. It's all about what those plants are going to yield in future years, because I'm going to be able to take cuttings, seed, all sorts of things and increase them more and more. Now, instead of choosing a sort of typical autumn palette of oranges and reds, I've gone for something completely different. I've gone for all sorts of different purples and pinks. That includes not just the flowers, but also the foliage too. And this is an exciting new euphorbia. It's called Miner's Merlot, which I presume is a reference to some sort of red wine. It's gorgeous, isn't it? This deep burgundy colour, and structural too. Next, I want to use this lovely little verbena. It's called Lollipop. You can see why, can't you? It's much shorter than that very familiar Verbena bonariensis. And I just want to use them next to the euphorbia to make a low sort of recess so you can see right through the planting. Can I manage all three at once? Yeah. I've been really careful as I've been preparing this bed not to walk on the soil, because if you do, you just crush all the life out of it, all those lovely little microorganisms who are making it rich and fertile. So the next thing I want is this Cynthia trichum, and it's one called Photograph, and it's very similar, of course it's in the same family, as the blue asters, the little Carlo that we've got in the brick garden, but it's got tiny flowers and very, very dainty. And lots of these small flowered asters are very sort of floppy and all over the place, but this has got these strong upright stems. So I want to use a wave of them, and I'm going to combine them with some grasses too. Just look at this. Ooh! That tells you what season it is, doesn't it? But this is what I want, these beautiful panicums. Aren't they wistful and wonderful against that brilliant, peerless blue sky? Its common name is switchgrass. It's a North American grass, and all these blades get tinged with red. But then the inflorescence is also crimson too, and it's very, very wafty. Lots of things in here I can propagate from right the way through the season, and this one in particular, this lovely sedum. It's called Autumn Joy because this is the time when it's at its best. It's the best plant ever in the autumn for butterflies and bees. The icing on the cake is to include a few bulbous plants. Now, usually you associate bulbs with the spring, but autumn has its own special bulbs too, and this is one of them. This is Nerine Bowdenii, And it comes from South Africa, like so many of our gorgeous plants. And when this goes into the ground, I want to be able to see the top of that bulb because the sun is going to ripen it over the season. In the summer, there'll be big green leaves, then they'll all die away. And the sun will shine down on this bulb and really make sure that we get these splendid flowers in the autumn. When you do a new planting like this and you put these things together, you create a mood, a sort of atmosphere. And I do think that's exactly what this planting does. It feels autumnal, very soft, slightly melancholic, but absolutely beautiful. It's lovely.
Come on, then. Come on. There's no doubt that autumn can be the most lovely season with magical light here. But I have to say, it can go overnight. When we get heavy rain, which we invariably do sometime in the middle of November, it crushes everything. So make the most of it while it lasts. However, when it's really wet, you can come indoors and plant bulbs. And this is the ideal place. This is the first outing, the first time I've really started to use the doghouse, which has been relocated from my garden at RHS Chelsea. And today I want to plant early flowering irises. And these early irises are absolutely beautiful. And I love the way they give this burst of color to late winter and early spring. Now, when you're growing them, what you need is a fairly shallow pot. These are small flowers, so they don't need a big pot. Terracotta's better for two reasons. One, it looks better, and two, it's more porous, so therefore reduces the risk of waterlogging. And where you've got a big drainage hole in the bottom, you're going to need crocks. So we'll put that over. Now, the compost are pre-mixed, and this consists of peat-free coir-based compost mixed in with lots of grit. Now, there are various varieties I've got here, but Pixie is one of my favorites. Really vibrant purple, and I love the way these early irises have richer, deeper colors. As ever, when you're planting bulbs, pointy end up, flat end down, and that's where the roots will come from, and that's where the flower stem will come from. And just around the edge first, and I always plant my bulbs this way, not because it's necessarily the best way, but it works for me. And when they flower, you won't notice any kind of pattern of planting. They shouldn't be touching, but they want to be fairly close together. And then another inner circle. That is as thinly spaced as I would ever do it. Pack them in. What we're going for is a really intense burst of color, lighting up a late winter afternoon. Having done that, cover them over. And then, and I think this is quite important, I always add a layer of grit on top. And this does a number of things. For a start, it looks good. But perhaps more importantly, when these are outside in the rain, they're quite small flowers and they're delicate petals. And if you get heavy rain, it hits the compost, splashes mud up and can stain the flowers. And this will completely stop that. It also improves drainage. It also acts as a slight mulch. So all in all, it's a really good thing to do. Finally, never forget, label. Iris, Pixie. I will water that now, and then it can be stored somewhere where it is protected above all from being too wet. Wet is the enemy to this because they can rot. So under the eaves of a house or cold frame, but don't be tempted to put them somewhere warm. They don't need light until you see shoots. They will start to appear in January, and then give them some water. And then as soon as you start to see buds, put them out into full light. And that surge of colour and life you get around about the end of February and into March, nothing expresses it better than these glorious flowers. Now, every gardener, wherever you are, is aware that the climate is changing, and that is affecting how and when our gardens are growing and flowering. And we went down to Somerset to visit a garden which is focused particularly on adapting to climate change.
I had two amazing grandfathers who were very keen vegetable growers, and I was given a small area garden for my own, and I used to grow colourful flowers. I'm Sally Morgan. I'm a no-dig organic gardener with an interest in climate resilience. It means I'm creating a garden that is resilient for the future climate. We moved here 20 years ago, cleared it as it was overgrown, and more recently I've changed the emphasis of the garden to water and experimental planting. This is my aggregate bed. It's concrete, rubble, with a little bit of subsoil. So here I've got some self-seeders, the lady's mantle, the verbena, plants that can cope with never being watered. And this bed hasn't been watered in the 2 years that they've been here. So the plants have got to put down deep roots and cope, so they are resilient. Permeability is really important in this garden. So the mortar has been chosen specifically because it allows water to pass through. There's millions of gardeners in the country, and we occupy a large space. And so if everybody just made little steps towards slowing the flow of water, for example, into the drains, into our rivers, we would reduce flooding for everybody. We have a southwest-facing wall, so it's lovely and warm. And here I'm trying out some more ornamental, exotic plants to see how they cope. I'm trying not to intervene, not to give them too much water, not to give them too much TLC. The cannas come back every year. The gingers, which are just behind them, again, quite a thuggish plant. It's spreading like mad. We've had failures, so a lot of the drought-resilient plants I put in 5 years ago didn't make it through our really warm, wet winters. So it's all a learning curve. So the kitchen garden came in early during the development of the garden. It is as ornamental as it is productive. And the base of it is a healthy soil, which is well protected, that has lots of different plants growing in it, which supports maximum soil biodiversity. This is my squash bed. When the sun comes out and it's very high temperatures, these squash suffer. So if I can cast shade over them, they're not going to lose as much water. So I've got taller plants amongst them. I've got some sweet corn growing up the middle here, tree spinach with its lovely purple tops of the leaves there, which you can use in salad. And then finally in this bed, hopnis or earth nut, which is a tuber, which you can use like a potato. Looking after the soil by putting on mulch is really important. It will stop that water from evaporating from the surface of the soil. Before I planted out these brassicas, I sowed the bed thickly with phacelia. And the whole idea here is to see whether a living mulch of phacelia will actually help the plants and reduce the need to water them. I've cut them down, and now I've got this lovely thick mulch, and this will rot down to create a nice layer of humus over the soil. And interestingly, this bed hasn't been watered in May and June and July, so really pleased with that. I've got a clover lawn rather than a traditional grass lawn. Hasn't been watered all year, and when I cut it, the leaves make the most amazing nutritious mulch, which I can use on my hungry plants. So one of the things I'm really excited about is population genetics. And so now I have a population parsnip, which are more varied in terms of the genetics. I've been saving seed for 10 years. It started off as one variety, but I've incorporated other varieties over the years, like parsnip Guernsey, which comes from northern France. Hopefully that will bring with it some genes that will be more resilient to perhaps drought. We will see in the fullness time, but I think if we look further afield and see those genes that we can incorporate into our own populations, then that might give us a little bit more resilience as the climate becomes more unpredictable. I think over the last 20 years, I've seen such extreme weather, so it's less predictable than perhaps my grandfather would have expected. I think, like all gardeners, we're at the front edge of the changes and we see these things happening. We have some phenomenal data from hundreds of years from those wonderful naturalists. And we look at that data and we know that spring is advancing by 5 days every 10 years. We know in some cases, like trees, they have advanced by 14 days, which makes it really difficult to plan. The orchard is important. It brings a lot of shelter. They have deep roots. They hold water. But I'm worried that the apples that I pick today may not be suitable for the climate of 15 to 20 years' time. And so I'm looking further afield. I'm looking to northern France to see what apples grow well there. And I might start growing some of those because the climate might suit them perfectly. This is my favourite part of the garden, the rill. And it's carrying water out to the other side of the garden when it overflows. And the whole idea here is to slow the flow of water rather than running straight off the house roof into the stream and potentially flooding low downstream. My top tips will be to harvest as much water as possible. Permeability, to make sure as much of the water goes through into the water table in your own personal spaces, and planting for diversity, which again will give you resilience in the long term. People I meet are really worried about climate change, so I think it's important they think about the extremes. How would their garden cope if they had 4 inches of rain in a day? We're sort of the first generation of gardeners who have to think for ourselves. We can't look back and use the same lessons of the past.
I think Sally's point about conserving water is absolutely essential, and for all of us who went through last summer, every drop of water was precious, and we are trying to harvest our water as much as possible. I've put great big cattle troughs, both on this side and around the other side of the building, new gutters. I'm waiting for the corner pieces that I can connect the downpipes to, and it just gives us another whole supply of water. And we don't water the borders here ever. We water plants when they go in, and we water plants in containers. And if you can use rainwater rather than wasting precious tap water, so much the better. Come on, matey. Good boy. Come on. The greenhouse has moved from summer mode into winter, or at least is moving, because on one side, we've finished the tomatoes, harvested everything that's ripe, and cleared them away. On this side, we've still got some tomatoes ready to be harvested. These were put in about 2 to 3 weeks later, so therefore they're a bit behind. We've still got some ripening tomatoes. But I would stress, if you've got any green tomatoes, inside or out, they are not going to ripen. So you either use them green or you just cut your losses. Put them into the compost heap and the goodness will go back into the garden. But that's not the end of things, because we're now going into the winter phase and we really use the greenhouse. And it's fantastic for supplying winter leaves. And about 6 weeks ago, I sowed a batch of oriental greens. I've got Mitsuna here, I've got a purple Mitsuna, and a brand new one on me, which is Kometsuna. And they're all brassicas. They can all be eaten raw in salads. They've got a slightly mustardy tang, which I really like. Or you can stir fry them, you can use them in soups and stews, or just eat them as a vegetable. They need a little bit of protection. And they're hardy to about -5 or 6, which, if you grow in a city, is probably fine. This unheated greenhouse is perfect, absolutely ideal. So I'm going to plant them out now, and we'll start harvesting in a few weeks' time. So we'll start with the normal Mitsuna, the green one, which I think looks lovely apart from anything else. It's really decorative. Now these actually grown differently than I normally do, because normally I grow seed, prick them out into plugs. We were very short of plugs, so I've pricked them out into a deep seed tray. And you treat them really like cutting up brownies. If I just cut that like that, and go like that, I should be able to take that out. There we go. So there we are. Good root system, plenty of soil around it. It works very well. When I take the tomatoes out, the soil is pretty compacted because you're walking on the soil to pick the tomatoes. So I fork it over, I then add a generous layer of compost, and then I lightly rotivate it in. And then what you have is a really nice loose soil that we can plant into there like that. One of the really good things about all these oriental greens is that they are cut and come again. You cut either the whole plant or some leaves from it, and from where you've cut, it will regrow. If you keep it well watered, and there's plenty of goodness in the soil, you can get at least 3 harvests between now and March. So you don't need a huge amount of plants to have a supply of fresh greens. And I think that's what I love most about this, is that it's the freshness. You know, in the middle of winter, there's only so much joy to be had from boiled cabbage and parsnips and turnips. But fresh greens, particularly if they're eaten raw, heaven. Right, put these in here. Now this is different in 2 ways. This is a purple Mitsuna. It's got less serrated leaves, and I've grown them slightly differently too, because these are in plugs. And when you grow in plugs, you should be able to lift them out the plug and the soil hold, but not be so dense with root that you can't see any of the compost underneath. So that's pretty much perfect. And by the way, you know that by just checking them. Just every now and then lift one out and see how it is. And it makes planting terribly easily. So what I tend to do is just lift out a handful like that. And they're strong enough not to break. They need a smaller hole, and in we go. As much as anything else, I like a purple leaf on my plate. They look good in the greenhouse growing, but they also look good when you make a salad. Right, I will work my way down the bed, but we're off to East Sussex now to visit a garden that is part of a dramatic life change.
My name's Dwayne, and I'm a full-time student, currently studying psychology and counselling, and I'm training to become a therapist. My garden has a raised bed, a herb garden, 70+ dahlias, wild grasses, wisteria, pathways of lavender, a fountain, a wild meadow area, and most importantly, my beloved greenhouse. Our garden means everything to us. It's moments where we can have fun, laugh, share with our loved ones. It is everything, and I don't know what we'd do without it. Me and my partner moved here 7 years ago, and it was literally a mud pile full of builder's rubble and dirt. And it was the first time that we had the opportunity to take ownership of such a space. My route into gardening was through my grandfather and seeing his allotment for the first time. My granddad was born in Kingston, Jamaica, then moved to Smethwick, Birmingham, and growing was really important to him back home. And he brought all the food that was a staple in his kitchen in Jamaica, he brought that to Smethwick, Birmingham, and that's what he grew in his allotment. This part of the garden reflects my heritage, my history. I guess, in a sense, this is where it all started for me, in my granddad's allotment. This is a piece of that memory that I get to carry on. I was probably the only grandchild that got to go to his allotment because I was the only one that wanted to go. I can see him as clear as day tending to his allotment. And the main thing that he grew was callaloo, part of the amaranth family. It's better than spinach. It's got more iron, it's prettier to grow. You can use it as an ornamental flower. And I just remember callaloo was really difficult to get your hands on in Smethwick. And he was their local supplier. And I remember people at the church, Ezra, is the callaloo ready? Is the callaloo ready? I didn't have that much luck with callaloo this year, but I am creating a nice little spinach and kale bouquet to give to my next door neighbour. When I'm giving away the fruit and veg that I grow, I wrap them in bouquets. It's very camp, innit? But that's what I like to do. And I was transported straight back to my granddad, who used to do the same thing. He used to give you your callaloo in a plastic bag. He was a very practical man, but it really felt like history repeating itself. It felt like my granddad was in the greenhouse with me. He definitely passed that on. I think my granddad would be proud to see me gardening today. He'd probably criticize that I'm not growing enough fruit and veg and I'm growing way too many flowers, but I think he would be very proud, yeah. So I lost contact with my dad's side of the family from about the age of 14. So losing the opportunity to garden wasn't much of a big deal for me at the time. I was more concerned with feelings that I had of being gay. And I was so concerned with becoming a musical theatre star and being a performer, and that became my escapism. I'm just currently tending to my dahlias. They are the main show in this bed. They are the drama. They are my drag queens of the flower beds. School was tough for me. I went to one of the roughest schools in North London, which I guess you could say it was character building. I was a sensitive young boy, very shy, and the arts offered me the opportunity to create and be someone else and live a fantasy. Dahlias are camp and they're flamboyant, and it wasn't something that was celebrated when I was a kid, so I get to celebrate it now in my garden. I love the variety and the flamboyance of dahlias, and I've grown a lot from seed this year, which is probably why there's a lot of yellow in this bed. But I love them all nonetheless. We've got Cornell Bronze, which is one of my favorites. Gorgeous orange honeycomb. This is probably one of the first dahlias that I started growing. Robust, strong, really nice long stem, great for flower arranging. I always keep several secateurs on the go as well. I try not to go from one dahlia to the next, and that just prevents spreading any type of disease. I'd say each dahlia has its own personality. They're not afraid of the beauty, and they have a confidence that I still aspire to. So this is Tartan, first year growing him. Almost reminds me of a burgundy raspberry ripple. Sweet, delicious, and tasty. And then we have Fenabai, a stunning pink pom-pom diva in a tutu. That's what she reminds me of. I love the reaction on people's faces when I gift them a bunch of dahlias. This is not a bad bunch. 10s across the board. So I met my soulmate, Simon, 15 years ago. We fell in love, became inseparable. He changed my life. We've changed each other's lives. And we shared a small garden space when we first got together. And then we moved into this space. Another delight from the cut flower bed.
Oh, wow.
It was the first time that we had the opportunity to blend both of ourselves into this gorgeous garden space. It's a very young garden and we're still learning, but I enjoy seeing it change every year. Every year there's something different and there's something else and there's something else that reflects us. So we've tried to create a lot of movement in this garden, from the grasses to the fennel, which reminds me of jazz music. The fennel reminds me of Nina Simone, Ella Fitzgerald, just how nourishing it is to the soul. I love to study and take stock in this space, or just listen to music and just watch the grasses, just watch the fennel. This garden reflects so many facets of my personality. My garden has taught me to love every bit of myself, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The weeds that grow, the dahlias that we plant, everything has beauty in it. Everything has a place. As someone who's training to become a therapist, I would love to take that into my work. If we can combine horticulture and therapy to support our well-being, I think that's massive.
Well, I'm not surprised that Dwayne loves his garden because it does look fantastic. Now, it is time to plant garlic bulbs, not seeds. If you possibly can, buy fresh garlic bulbs every year because they can accumulate viruses and those viruses can stay in the soil, which is why I'm growing them in this bed, which has not had garlic in it for at least 3 years. So move them around, try and buy fresh bulbs if you can. Now, what I've got here are these whopping great elephant garlic cloves. Now, elephant garlic is, as the name suggests, much bigger than any other garlic. But ironically, it's much milder. And in fact, it's a form of leek. So it's hardier and in many ways easier to grow. However, it looks like a garlic and behaves like a garlic, and you grow it like a garlic. And the key thing to remember, and it's not difficult, is have the pointy end at the top. The second thing is you bury them, at least their own height below the surface of the soil, so at least that deep. What they do need is good drainage but rich soil. So give them some fresh compost. Now, elephant garlic is quite a big plant, so the very closest I plant these is about 1 foot or so apart. In fact, I'm going to put them a bit wider than that here because I like to plant in amongst them. I'll probably put lettuce or rocket in next spring. And as a rule, normal garlic about 9 inches apart. Just gently cover the bulbs over. Do try and plant garlic, certainly by Christmas. It needs some cold for the bulbs to form separate cloves. So planting now, October, November, and harvesting not before mid-June. And you'll see little shoots appearing in about 4 to 6 weeks' time. We're going to join Joe now as he visits a community garden with its emphasis on propagation.
Cities can be tough places to live. They're noisy, they're busy, and by definition, they're full of people too. And some can find them isolating and even oppressive. Which is why an oasis like this allotment site in St Werburgh's in the heart of Bristol, filled with greenery and nature, is such a breath of fresh air.
But this is an allotment site with a difference. It's run by St Werburgh City Farm, and nestled within it is a social enterprise called Propagation Place. who specialise in growing plug plants.
But their nurturing work goes beyond the pots, seeds and compost and out into the local urban community beyond their gates.
Alice Lee is project manager.
Hello, Alice.
Hello, Joe.
OK, I can see why they call it Propagation Place. Yeah. There's propagation going on everywhere. You've got plants at every different stage.
That's the idea, really. We are raising seedlings to help people to grow their own vegetables here.
So what happens to all these plants?
So some of them stay here in Bristol. So local people come and buy them from our farm shop, which is just on the city farm there. And the rest of them get sent all over the country.
So would people rather grow from plugs and plants than seed themselves? Or do you feel like you're just helping them on a little bit?
So I think a lot of it is expertise and access to just the right growing facilities is quite hard for a lot of people, particularly in the city. People were really finding it quite difficult to just get through that hard first stage. So the idea was that maybe if we provided the plants, it would help people to have a bit more success on their plots.
I'm surrounded by perennial veg of every kind here. But for Alice and her team, providing just plants isn't enough. They're determined to help local people into horticulture through a trainee scheme. Twice a week, under Horticultural Officer Rihanna Michike, trainees come to learn all the key skills needed.
So you've got the plant, you can hold it by the leaf like that, you make a hole, and then you just really gently tuck it in. Does that sound good? Yeah.
Brilliant. Is there big demand here for you?
There is, yeah. I mean, it's quite hard for young people to get into horticulture, especially women, and we do find that it is mostly young women who are coming to us. We have had a few males, but they tend to be absorbed into the more like landscapey side of it a bit easier.
So Elsie, what drew you here in the first place?
So I've recently just done a college course in horticulture, and then I came to St Werburgh's to do some other volunteering, and they told me about this, and I signed up straight away because it sounded like exactly what I want to do.
And are you going to go on and keep within the gardening field?
If I can, yeah, I'm trying my best.
So Larry, you feel that support's really helped you?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I feel like I gain a lot more knowledge. I want to work with plants and gardening. So through this traineeship, I felt like I gained a lot of confidence in the field and gained a lot of knowledge I wouldn't have gained if I went straight into a job.
Well, you can definitely tick off the pricking out module on the course.
And the compost.
I'll give you 10 out of 10.
Yay! Now you've got to write me a reference. You said 10 out of 10, it's too late.
As well as training the next generation of horticulturalists, Rihanna and the team also cultivate good relations with their neighbouring allotmenteers. Alan Herbert used to help his grandfather here back in the 1970s, and these days he looks after security and helps out wherever he can. He even helped build Propagation Place's polytunnel, and today he's come to lend Rihanna one of his many tools.
Oh, hey, Alan. You all right?
Hi, you want to borrow my strimmer?
I do. I need it to cut the front of the gardens there.
So is that how it works then, Alan? You lend the strimmer and in return you get some
Plants, yes.
Alan often comes over to me with armfuls of cucumbers and courgettes and marrows.
A little bit of banter and bartering, old school bartering.
Yeah.
Is it an hourly rate, a daily rate, weekly? How does this work?
It's like 2 beetroots an hour or something, isn't it?
Alan is one of the many horticultural heroes on this special allotment site. He learned how to grow from his grandfather. But in the city today, many people face social isolation and other barriers, which is where the plug plant team here step in again. Their volunteer group meets once a week, often referred by GPs, hospitals or therapists.
This is going to have so many hairs. It's nice to just take a moment.
Today, Athene, Liam and Abigail have come to get their hands among the flowers.
Do you enjoy yourself, Liam, here? You into your gardening?
It's a nice place where I can come and literally and literally relax and calm down. Whenever I come here, I learn like at least 2 or 3 things every single time.
Yeah.
Literally, my housemates have been like to me earlier, asking me don't just do like a gardening course in college and stuff like that. But I'm actually thinking of doing that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's inspiring you.
Yeah.
It's really good for like mental health and people who struggle with like anxiety and maybe people who are unemployed and struggle to get out of the house. And I feel like that's something that sort of sits with me quite a lot, that I struggle with. And having the opportunity to come here just once a week, it's not really intense. It's just come if you want. If you're not able to come, that's fine. Even though it's just once a week, I think coming out and spending time with people that I don't really know, who are all very lovely, calm, friendly people, allows me to build a bit of confidence.
I think it's good to stay active and get out of your comfort zone and learn new things. And I feel like it brings up, it's just casual conversation. You're not overthinking things. So it's a nice way to open conversations, learn about new people, learn about yourself through nature. I feel like I do love like doing activities with people. I feel like that's always a nice way to connect.
It's been a real joy to spend time in this inner city oasis and see the power of some hands-on horticulture.
Gardening never ceases to amaze me. This place is just fabulous, and it means so much to so many people as well. You know, there's the horticulture side, there's the educational side, but beyond that, it's about giving people confidence and bringing people together and getting people to open up about their problems. And everyone we've met today is so engaged in it. It's just fabulous. You know, gardeners have got to start somewhere, and what a place to start.
I think learning to propagate, however you do it, whether you do it with a guide and a mentor or you just practice on your own, is incredibly empowering. It frees you up in so many ways to do lots of things, so that's a brilliant project. Now, since we are in the mushroom season, I've decided to grow some mushrooms. And if you've got young children or grandchildren, I think this is something that they will love. Now, you can buy kits, but they're available in many different guises. And as long as you follow the instructions, they will work. But the principle is all the same. Fungus, of course, lives most of its life either underground or in rotting wood, and fruits occasionally. And the fruits are what we see. What I've got here is a kit to grow oyster mushrooms. And I've got a bag here that is filled with chopped up straw, which is the growing medium. And I've also got a bag of the spores mixed in with grain and with bran. This one, you do need to pasteurize the growing medium. And basically that means getting rid of any pathogens or bacteria that may be there, which will compete with the fungus spores as they grow. And the easiest way to do that is simply boil a kettle, pour the hot water onto the growing medium, leave it for 8 hours, then you cut a little hole in the bottom, drain the water out, so you have damp, pasteurized straw. But here's one I prepared earlier. So this now is pasteurized. So I need to mix it up. And by the way, before doing this, I wash my hands thoroughly, not to protect my hands, but to make sure that I'm not introducing any extra fungi or bacteria that may have been in my soil. So we cut that, take a handful of the mixture and add it in and mix it up thoroughly. Now, I have to say, this is not exactly designed for an ancient bloke with rather large hands, but I think my 6-year-old grandson would love this. And another one. Now, you might think the obvious way to do this would be to pour it into a sort of washing up bowl and mix it like that. But if you do that, you'll have the danger of introducing fungi and bacteria from the washing up bowl. So do it inside the bag. Now I know how a vet feels up to the elbow in cow. Okay. Once you've done that, fold it over and put it in a mild, dark place. It shouldn't be hot, shouldn't be cold, 20 degrees. Anywhere in the house will do. Check it after 3 weeks. If you see a mass of white threads, the mycelium, spreading, then you know that it's ready to fruit. And it should be somewhere between 3 and 4 weeks. Once you think it's ready, cut across with a knife, put it somewhere light, spray it every day to keep it moist, and they should fruit. But don't worry, I will share this with you, and hopefully we will have a fine harvest of oyster mushrooms. Right. Even if you don't fancy growing mushrooms this weekend, here are some other jobs for you to do. If you have some cloches, and I can highly recommend getting some, get them out of storage and give them a really good clean, and this is make sure that as much light as possible passes through them. Use them to extend the harvesting period of vegetables such as lettuce or dwarf beans, but don't close the ends up, as it's important to keep plenty of ventilation passing through. At this time of year, trees are very susceptible to storm damage, either because they are still in full leaf or particularly if they're heavy with fruit. The first thing to do is to make sure that any stake is really firmly in the ground, and then either replace or secure the necessary ties. Streptocarpus are in full flower at this point of the year, but to extend that flowering season as long as possible, right up till Christmas, it's worth giving them one last feed of the season. Use a liquid seaweed or a tomato feed, and don't try and overstrengthen it. Water carefully, trying to avoid splashing the leaves, directing the feed to the base of the plant and the soil. We're right in the middle of the apple harvest season. And in fact, apples can be ready, according to variety, from the end of July well into November. But when you're picking apples, it's no good saying they should be ready in October or the color looks perfect. There's only one way to really tell if they're ripe, and that is to take them gently and then just lift with your hand to the horizontal. If it doesn't come away, it's not ready. And that's that. Now that is ripe. But when you've picked it, if you're not going to eat it straight away, handle them carefully. Don't throw them into a basket, place them, and then put them somewhere dark and cool with a bit of ventilation, and they will store for months. Anyway, that's it for today. I will be back here at Longmeadow next Friday. So until then, bye-bye.